My name is Loren. I'm here representing the West Virginia Bankers Association. I'm General Counsel and Director of Government Relations to the Bankers Association. Our association is 127 years old. We have 67 bank members from across the state, including banks not only that are headquartered and chartered here, but banks that are headquartered and chartered either by the federal government or some other state who are engaged in banking operations here in the state. We have 70 associate members, and those are organizations and entities that serve the banking industry in some way. So we have everything from law firms to insurance agencies to office supplies retailers who are associate members. Our association is governed by a 22-member board of bankers representing banks of small, medium, and large size. We have a number of different committees and working groups within the association aimed at providing opportunities for our bankers to network with other bankers and to talk and learn from each other. We also have a group that we implemented a year and a half old now called the Bank Councils Consortium, which is a group of attorneys who represent banks in a multitude of different capacities. And that gives those folks an opportunity to come together and talk about some of the issues that are important to the banks and important to the consumer marketplace, but from a legal perspective. And so that, I think, has been it's a service both to the banking industry and to the consumers that our banks are serving. Our association also has, just to let you know, we also have a for-profit subsidiary that sells goods and services to the banks. So services and things that the banks might need to provide services to the consumers. Our association also has that for-profit subsidiary corporation that does that. So why are we here today? So I know a lot of folks in the room, and as Jonathan alluded to when he introduced me earlier, I've worn a lot of different hats. I see Kat McConnell here in the room, who I clerked with back in law school at that school up north. I was involved in senior legal aid then as a law clerk. Tracy, obviously, who you already heard from, I worked at the Division of Financial Institutions as Deputy General Counsel to the Commissioner of Financial Institutions. I started practice right out of law school, representing both debtors and creditors in bankruptcy. Sorry, throat jumped. And now I'm over at the association. And so I know lots of folks, and I've been really involved in financial services throughout my whole career. And at every step of the way, my responsibilities have in some way been related to consumers and the relationship between the financial services industry and consumers. So I wanted to give you just a little bird's eye view sort of the banking industry in West Virginia first, and then talk more specifically about how the Bankers Association hopes to be a good partner to the Consumer Law Center and to the various trades and services, sort of that are here in the room today. We have currently, and some of this data is 2018. We don't have 2019 aggregate data yet. We have currently 73 banks operating in the state of West Virginia. They have over 600 branches or branch offices in the state. Our banks are serving 2.5 million customers in West Virginia and holding over 33 billion in deposits. Banks employ 10,000, almost 11,000 employees in the state of West Virginia. The median compensation package, including salary and benefits, is $51,000, and it's $642 million in total compensation to the folks who are employed by banks in West Virginia. Our banks have currently outstanding $2.8 billion in small business loans, $942 million in small farm loans. We have $2.2 billion in new home loans in 2018. that's a total of over 15,000 loans, and the median loan size is about $110,000. So that sort of gives you some perspective on the importance of the banking industry in the consumer marketplace, and the role that banks play across every element of our market. But also, I have a piece of data here. Banks and their employees reported 65,362 hours of volunteer community service in West Virginia in 2018. And so from the big picture, drilling down to the sort of level, the really tight focus, banking is really about, and I think you heard from Mark Mangano earlier, I think banking is really about relationships with their customers. And it's not by its nature an adversarial relationship. It's not any different from the relationship that the consumer has with their doctor or with their hairdresser or their dog groomer, right? These are the relationship is one of a consumer who needs a service and a participant who's willing to provide that service for a fee. And that's important to bankers. It's not always sort of the perception of the banking industry in America. Certainly after the 2008-2009 crisis, the industry took some hits in the perception, in the public perception. But that's an important thing that I think that people don't understand about banks and banking industries is banks really value good, healthy, constructive relationships with their customers and with consumers. So what role do we have to play, the Banking Association have to play in this space? Two of the principal, I'm just going to mention very briefly, two of the primary pillars of service that the association brings to our member banks and to the banking industry in West Virginia are advocacy and education. And so I think Jonathan mentioned earlier, I do government relations. I'm the director of government relations for our association. And so that, obviously intrinsically involves legislation and sort of being up to date and keeping an eye on both state and federal rules and regulations that apply to the banking industry. But also there's an element of of advocacy that does not necessarily take place at some of the prudential regulators or at the DFI or at the legislature, but here in groups like this, where we can be an advocate and a participant in these types of conversations and educating other participants in this space and in the market. And one of the things that we hope to be able to do a better job going forward with the Consumer Law Center is serve as a central clearinghouse for aggregating data and information about the industry and about the important relationships that our member banks have with consumers in a way that's not a one-off situation. One of the things that we find when we talk about legislative, anytime an issue sort of bubbles up and becomes a legislative issue, what we find is that one or two participants in the market are having this issue, but it's not something that necessarily is widespread or impacts all institutions or all consumers. And then you always have this worry that, oh, are we legislating something that there might have been some other solution to, right? Or a better way to address a problem. And so what we hope to do is do a better job of aggregating and compiling data, identifying trends and real legitimate systemic issues for our industry and for our consumers. And then be a voice on behalf of our industry and all of our bank members to bring stakeholders together, like the Law Center, the Consumer Law Center has done here today, where we can get the folks who, the various disciplines who might have good, important, useful information that can inform and educate the topic or the issue, and thereby create a better system of rules and regulations that oversee our industry and and continue to protect the consumers that we serve. So the other thing, the other pillar is the education pillar, and I think that's pretty self-explanatory. But our association does a great deal of work in educating bankers, specifically, and bank employees on everything from financial exploitation to commercial lending to we have a banking school that's going on right now for young bankers to learn about the basic fundamentals and principles of banking. And so that part of our education mission has always been going on. What we hope to do and how we hope to participate in the future is not only educating bankers, but do a better job of educating our consumers, facilitating consumer education, and also the other other disciplines, other industries that are tangential to the banking industry. So with that said, we appreciate the opportunity to be here. We welcome any way we can be of assistance in providing information or collecting data or being at the table to discuss issues. We hope to be there, and we look forward to good things from the Consumer Law Center. Thanks for having me.